So that's the end of chapter 7. So we've got our 3 points. We've got, what do you mean by that? How did you come to that conclusion? And now you're kind of asking,
have you considered this?
A leading question.
Yeah.
Have you considered, or can you help me can you help me understand?
Yeah.
This being the case,
or can you clear this up for me?
Right.
That's what
some people say.
Yeah.
So we've got Columbo and we've got it down, and no more needs to be said from this, right? Okay, chapter 8 is going to help us out a little bit more. Here we're perfecting Columbo, and so what are kind of the skills that we can utilize, because obviously Greg Koukl is kind of a master at this. Obviously, he came up with a system, so that helps. But he, within chapter 8, he even talks about times where he's kind of fallen over he's being mobbed by a group of people that all want his attention. He's talking to someone who has conflicting views about something, and he just kind of messes it up. And so
but let me just encourage folks that there's a lot of stories in this book, right? And we could read pages after pages, and we don't want to bore anybody, right? But this is a good book to have, because those stories help him illustrate the principles and points that he's trying to make here. Right?
And he uses himself in a lot of these kind of falter points that are important, because he even says that he doesn't know everything and he doesn't have it perfect down. And so it's nice. I always think, workout videos. I always want one person to workout video who looks like me and is struggling with just absolutely everything. I don't need the super toned bodies. That's something to aspire to, but give me the bumbling fool. I'm there. So in chapter 8, we're talking about perfecting Columbo. We want to perfect any new skill. It takes time and practice, and guess what? This is no issue here. We're going to have to kind of think about it ourselves. And so he uses here 1 Peter 3:15 of always be ready to give a defense to everyone who ask you to give an account for the hope that is in you. And we always should include with gentleness and meekness, or gentleness and respect. That's what the Columbo does, because it keeps you humble. It keeps you meek, because you're asking questions. You're still advancing where you want to go. You're still clarifying. You're still trying to get that person to the point that you want them to go. But your demeanor is even more in check in that. And so he's talking about, be ready to give a defense for everyone who asks. Well, how do we do that? Yeah. Good question. So he says that, in any encounter that we have with folks, there are 2 times when the pressure is off. Right. The first time is before the conversation begins. Right. And the second is when it's over. Yeah. Right. And so he says that, after it's over in this situation, we can think through what has happened. Right. He says there are 3 specific things that you can do to ready yourself to respond the next time. Right. You can anticipate beforehand what might come up. Right. You can reflect afterwards on what took place. And in both cases here, you can practice the responses you think of during these reflective moments, so you'll be prepared for the next opportunity, right? So, you kind of think through, okay, how did I do here? What were the responses? And then come up with better responses, perhaps, that you may come up with or have in this particular thing. So, anticipate what they're going to say ahead of time, right? That's when you're considering these types of things, you really want to think through, if I say this, what will they say? Right. And then if they say that, what can I say? Right. So you want to be able to think through in a way like that, so that you're prepared. You're prepared to answer these questions. Right. So think about things like you're watching a debate and you're seeing both sides of you. That person has probably done a bunch of research on the topic they're talking about. They've got a presentation. If it's a formal debate, that it doesn't get into the back and forth until later, and so they've come up with their best arguments and their best counter arguments, because they're going up against somebody on the other side. They're not just having a monologue, it's a dialogue. And so you can think of yourself, okay, if I was in that position, what would I have to know, not just to know my own position, but the other position, and even counterclaims to my position and counterclaims to their position. And so you just kind of work through that and figure out, what do I need to know?
Exactly. So, for instance, a few years ago, we studied Richard Dawkins' book, right? The God Delusion, because we wanted to know what he had to say and then what we could say regarding what he had to say, right? Yeah. We could have an answer.
It's really fun to do that through presuppositionalism, too. You just walk through kind of God Delusion, and instead of just hitting his points, say, I think that there's some presuppositions involved in this. Believe it or not, there is. And then so you can anticipate beforehand what might come up and also do it afterwards. Yeah. So, these three I kind of call shower thoughts. You're in the shower and you're like, I can't, that's what I should have said. Yeah. And so you kind of, you've had this conversation, especially if you are meeting that person that puts you in the hot seat. And so you're writing stuff down and you're coming up with responses and what you should have said and what you might have said better, or here's where I could have asked a better clarifying question, or instead of the first part of the Columbo tactic, use the second part. So you're kind of again, sports analogies kind of are not my forte, but you're watching the film, right? For football players do that. They say. Here's what we did. Let's review. Let's go to the tape and see, where I missed the tackle and how he juked me when I should have went right. He went left, and I should have looked at his hips. And so, if that's what they do with sports, or you can do it with chess or whatever you might you're watching. Kind of in your own mind how the events took place. Right. You're looking at areas where you might have lost your cool and went off the Columbo tactic.
Then you've lost.
Yeah, right. If anyone gets angry, then you've lost. And so, that might be a point where you can come back later and even use as a point of bringing up, hey, in our last conversation, I didn't really have the best answer for you here, or I didn't respond to you well. Would you mind if we kind of talked about it again, and I promise to be better about it, or I've come up with some new things. So. And then the third case is that you practice the responses that you think about in these for the next opportunity. So it might not be with that person, but it could be with somebody else. And so you kind of are amassing a collection of ideas here. So the no, always be ready. This is how you make yourself ready.
Right.